Chapter 10 Island of the Blue Dolphins. Summer is the best time on the island of the Blue Dolphins. The sun is warm, then the winds blow milder out of the west, sometimes out of the south. It is during these days that the ship might return, and now I spend most of my time on the rock looking out from the high headland to the east towards the country where my people had gone, across the sea that was never ending. Once, while I watched, I saw a small object which I took to be the ship, but a stream of water rose from it, and I knew that it was a whale spouting. During those summer days, I saw nothing else. The first storm of winter ended my hopes. If the white men's ship were coming for me, it would have come during the time of good weather. Now I would have to wait until winter was gone, maybe longer. The thought of being alone on the island, while so many suns rose from the sea and went slowly back into the sea, filled my heart with loneliness. I had not felt so lonely before because I was sure that the ship would return, as Messapet had said it would. Now my hopes were dead. Now I was really alone. I could not eat much, nor could I sleep without dreaming terrible dreams. The storm blew out of the north, sending a big wave against the island and the wind so strong that I was unable to stay on the rock. I moved my bed to the foot of the rock and for protection kept a fire going throughout the night. I slept there 5 times. The first night the dogs came and stood outside the ring made by the fire. I killed 3 of them with arrows, but not the leader, and they did not come again. On the 6th day, when the storm had ended, I went to the place where the canoes had been hidden and let myself down over the cliff. This part of the shore was sheltered from the wind, and I found the canoes just as they had been left. The dried food was still good, but the water was stale, so I went back to the spring and filled a fresh basket. I had decided during the days of the storm, when I had given up hope of seeing the ship, I would take one of the canoes to go to the country that lay towards the east. I remember how Kimki before had gone, had asked the advice of the ancestors who had lived many ages in the past, who had come to the island from the country, and likewise the advice of Zuma, the medicine man, who held power over the wind and the seas. But these things I could not do, for Zuma had been killed by the Aleuts, and all my life I had never been able to speak with the dead, though many times I had tried. Yet I cannot say that I was really afraid as I stood there on the shore. I knew that my ancestors had crossed the sea in their canoes, coming from the place which lay beyond. Kimki too had crossed the sea. I was not nearly so skilled with a canoe as these men, but I must say that whatever might befall me on the endless waters did not trouble me. It meant far less than the thought of staying on the island alone, without a home or companions, pursued by wild dogs, where everything reminded me of those who were dead and those who had gone away. Of the 4 canoes stored there against the cliff, I chose the smallest, which was still very heavy because it could carry 6 people. The task that faced me was to push it down the rocky shore and into the water, a distance 5 or 4 times its length. This I did by first moving all the large rocks in front of the canoe. Then I filled in all of those holes with pebbles, and along this path laid down long strips of kelp, making it a slippery bed. The shore was steep, and once I got the canoe to move on its own weight, it slid down the path and into the water. The sun was in the west when I left the shore. The sea was calm behind the high cliffs. Using the 2-bladed paddle, I quickly skirted the south part of the island. As I reached the sand pit, the wind struck. I was paddling from the back of the canoe because you can go faster kneeling there, but I could not handle it in the wind. Kneeling in the middle of the canoe, I paddled hard and did not pause until I had gone through the tides that run fast around the sand pit. There were many small waves, and I soon was wet, but as I came out from behind the spit, the spray lessened and the waves grew long and rolling. Though it would have been easier to go the way they slanted, this would have taken me in the wrong direction, and therefore kept me on my left hand, as well as the island, which grew smaller and smaller behind me. At dusk, I looked back. The island of the Blue Dolphins had disappeared. This was the first time that I felt afraid. There were only hills and valleys of water around me now. When I was in the valley, I could see nothing, and when the canoe rose out of it, only the ocean stretching away and away. Night fell, and I drank from the basket. The water cooled my throat. The sea was black, and there was no difference between it and the sky. The waves made no sound among themselves, only faint noises as they went under the canoe or struck against it. Sometimes the noises seemed angry, at other times like people laughing. I was not hungry because of my fear. The first star made me feel less afraid. It came out low in the sky, and it was in front of me towards the east. Other stars began to appear all around, but it was this one I kept my gaze on. It was in the figure that we call a serpent, a star which shone green and which I knew. Now and then it was hiding by mist, yet it always came out brightly again. Without the star I would have been lost, for the waves never changed. They came always from the same direction in a manner that kept pushing me away from the place I wanted to reach. For this reason, the canoe made a path in the black water like a snake. But somehow I kept moving towards the star which shone in the east. This star rose high and then kept the North Star on my left hand, the one we call the star that does not move. The wind grew quiet. Since it always died down when the night was over, I knew how long I had been traveling and how far away the dawn was. About this time, I found the canoe was leaking. Before dark, I had emptied one of the baskets in which the food was stored and used it to dip out the water that came in over the sides. The water that now moved around my knees was not from the waves. I stopped paddling and worked with the basket until the bottom of the canoe was almost dry. Then I searched around, feeling in the dark along the smooth planks, and found the place near the bow where the water was seeping through a crack as long as my hand and the width of my finger. Most of the time it was out of the sea, but it leaked whenever the canoe dipped forward in the waves. The place between the planks were filled with black pitch, which we gathered along the shore. Lacking this, I tore a piece of fiber from my skirt and pressed it into the crack which held back the water. Dawn broke in a clear sky as the sun came out of the waves. I saw that it was far off on my left. During the night I had drifted south on the place I wished to go. So I changed my direction and paddled along the path made by the rising sun. There was no wind on this morning, and the long waves went quietly under the canoe. I therefore moved faster than during the night. I was very tired, but more hopeful than I had been since I had left the island. If the good weather did not change, I would cover many leagues before dark. Another night, another day, bring me within sight of the shore towards which I was going. Not long after dawn, while I was thinking of this strange place and what it would be like, the canoe began to leak again. This crack was between the same planks, but was a larger one, and close to where I was kneeling. The fiber I tore from my skirt and pushed into the crack held back most of the water, which seeped in whenever the canoe rose and fell with the waves. Yet I could see the planks were weak from one end to the other, probably from the canoe being stored so long in the sun that they might open along their whole length with the wave if the waves grew rougher. It was suddenly clear to me that it was dangerous to go on. The voyage would take 2 more days, perhaps longer. By turning back to the island, I would not have nearly so far to travel. Still, I could not make up my mind to do so. The sea was calm, and I had come far. The thought of turning back after all this labor was more than I could bear. Even greater was the thought of the deserted island I would return to, of living there alone and forgotten. For how many suns and how many moons? The canoe drifted idly on the calm sea while these thoughts went over and over in my mind. But when I saw the water seeping through the crack again, I picked up the paddle. There was no choice except to turn towards the island. I knew that the only by the best of fortune I would reach it. The wind did not blow until the sun was overhead. Before that time, I covered a good distance, pausing only when was necessary to dip water from the canoe. With the wind, I went more slowly and had to stop more often because of the water spilling over the sides, but the leak did not grow worse. This was my first good fortune. The next was when a swarm of dolphins appeared. They came swimming out of the west, but as they saw the canoe, they turned around in a great circle and began to follow me. They swam up slowly and close so that I could see their eyes, which were large and the color of the ocean. Then they swam ahead of the canoe, crossing back and forth in front of it, dividing in and out, as if they were weaving a piece of cloth with their broad snouts. Dolphins are animals of good omen. It made me happy to have them swimming around the canoe, and though my hands had begun to bleed from the chafing of the paddle, just watching them made me forget the pain. I was very lonely before they appeared, but now I felt that I had friends with me, and did not feel the same. The blue dolphins left me shortly before dusk. They left as quickly as they had come, going on into the west, but for a long time I could see the last of the sun shining on them. After night fell, I could see them in my thoughts, and it was because of this that I kept on paddling when I wanted to lie down and sleep. More than anything, it was the blue dolphins that took me back home. Fog came with the night, yet from time to time I could see the star that stands high in the west, the red star called Magnet, which in part of the figure is part of the figure that looks like a crawfish and is known by that name. The crack in the planks grew wider, so I had to stop often to fill the fiber and to dip out the water. The night was very long, longer than the night before. Twice I dozed kneeling there in the canoe, though I was more afraid than I had ever been. But the morning broke clear, and in front of me lay the dim line of the island, like a great fish sunning itself on the sea. I reached it before the sun was high, and the sand pit and its tides that bore me into the shore. My legs were stiff from kneeling as the canoe struck the sand. I fell when I rose to climb out. I crawled through the shallow water and up the beach. There I lay for a long time, hugging the sand in happiness. I was too tired to think of the wild dogs. Soon I fell asleep. That was chapter 10, and you can do question 1 from chapters 10 and 11. Tomorrow we will complete chapter 10 and 11 questions, and then we will also complete chapter 6 through 10 quiz today if you have time. It's a multiple choice one, and I will send the answers later today. Thank you.